Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Arizona Illustrated for Friday, the 11th of May, 2012. I'm Jim Ninsel, host of Political Roundtable, our weekly analysis and commentary on local, state, and national politics. Tonight on the Roundtable, we'll find out the latest in the race to finish Gabby Giffords' congressional term 1 week before early voting begins, and we'll look at how the dust settled in the wake of the legislative session. Joining me this evening is former state lawmaker Peter Hirschberger, Republican strategist Sam Stone, and Democratic strategist Rod McLeod. Welcome to all of you. Rod, we are now 1 week before early voting starts. Next week, we're going to have a debate here at KUAT between the candidates in the Congressional District 8 race. Where do you see the state of the race as someone who's working on Team Barber?
I think it's going to be a tight race. This district has traditionally been a moderate swing district. And I think voters are really looking at this particular moment as the economy starts to pick up and gather steam. They're looking for a candidate who's going to stand up for the middle class, protect Social Security and Medicare. And in Ron Barber, they see a trusted leader, a very reliable, solid guy. And in Jesse Kelly, I think they see someone who is kind of all over the map. For years, he said he wanted to privatize Social Security, eliminate Medicare, phase them out. They were Ponzi schemes. And now all of a sudden, he's come up with a new position that he wants to protect Social Security. He even had his grandfather appear in an ad with him to try to humanize him. But at the end of the day, these are his words that he's going to have to live with, and I think voters know what he's all about, and I think he's in trouble.
And we'll be watching that ad in a moment. But Sam, from the Republican side of things, you, of course, worked on a campaign for one of Jesse's rivals in the primary. But where do you see the race at this point?
I agree. This is a very, very close race right now, and it's going to come down to the wire. To call Ron Barber a trusted leader in this community, I think is a massive stretch because nobody knows what his positions on anything are, and his leadership has all been from the rear with the gear. So Jesse Kelly's been out front for the last 3 years. He's been very consistent in his conservative values, and he said all along that he wanted to protect Social Security and Medicare for those who are nearing retirement age. And that hasn't changed. I think voters are looking at him and looking at the economic policies of the current administration and where they've taken us down the rabbit hole and looking for a new path. And I think they're going to come out and support Jesse.
And Pete, you are actually welcome to the Roundtable for the first time, former Republican state lawmaker, but you've crossed party lines to support Ron Barber in this race. Why?
That's correct. I agree with the consensus that it's going to be a close race. It depends on turnout. I support Ron Barber because he's a reasonable, practical politician. He represents those of us in the center, the independents, the moderate Republicans. He will work to solve problems absent of the ideology and the extremism that we see from Jesse Kelly.
Okay, and you mentioned just a moment ago, Rod, an ad that Jesse Kelly's running with his grandfather. I'd like to go ahead and take a look at that ad so we can talk about it.
Why are they distorting Jesse Kelly's record? Because Ron Barber wants to hide that he supports Obamacare, which will cut $500 billion from Medicare. Our seniors deserve better.
I'm Jesse Kelly, and I approve this message because I'm committed to protecting Social Security and Medicare for our seniors.
Don't let Ron Barber cut my benefits, Jesse. I've earned them.
Don't worry, Grandpa. I won't.
I know you'll protect us.
Jesse Kelly for Congress.
All right, Sam, what do you think of that ad?
It's a really good ad. I mean, we're seeing some very good television production in this race, and that's a great example. It's obviously a very strong emotional connection to that ad. I think people watching it, especially in this community with the large number of senior citizens and retirees we have here, I think it's going to resonate very well.
Rod?
Well, there's so many lies in the ad. There's no benefit cuts that Ron Barber has ever said he supports for Social Security or Medicare. And Jesse Kelly has said in very plain English and with real certitude and definition, it's not like Jesse has said, gosh, we might have to think about cutting Social Security. He says, no, we must. Here at this very table, he said, privatize it, phase it out. He wants to get rid of Social Security and Medicare. He doesn't think the government should have anything to do with those retirement programs. And so now he's got two different positions. And I think it comes down to trust. If you look at Ron Barber and you look at Jesse Kelly, who would you trust to actually do right by senior citizens, I don't think it's much of a contest.
And seniors, I think, are a prized demographic in this race, Pete. Where do you think they're coming down on this one?
Absolutely. I think they're going to support Ron Barber. Jesse is trying to walk back his previous statements, and he's not very effective at that. I think this ad is easy to see through, given the statements he's made before, and that causes a lot of concern for the seniors in our district.
There's absolutely no question seniors are the prize in this special election, with all the emphasis on early balloting. And one challenge for Jesse is getting to those seniors before they leave town for the summer. And I think he's going to be out front doing that very effectively, and I think his messaging is working.
All right, let's hold on. We've got one other ad, which is a response ad, actually, from the Barber campaign to that Jesse Kelly ad, and let's take a look at that one now.
Don't worry, Grandpa.
With Jesse Kelly, there's a lot to worry about. Kelly said he'd love to eliminate Social Security and Medicare.
Social Security and Medicare, it's the biggest Ponzi scheme in history. To privatize it, to phase it out.
Privatization is the only solution.
Now Kelly will say anything to get elected. Ron Barber will protect Social Security and Medicare too. No cuts, no way.
I'm Ron Barber, and I approve this message.
Okay, Rod, so that was the response from the Barber campaign to the Grandpa Hank ad.
Right, and there you see Jesse Kelly in his own words saying, privatization, it is the only solution. And this language is very interesting. This guy gets to the heart of what Jesse Kelly's about. Jesse believes that his way is the only way to do things. And if you have a different idea, it shouldn't be considered, there shouldn't be a dialogue, there shouldn't be a discussion. He's got it all figured out, and his way is the only way. And I just don't think that works in Congress, and I don't think it's going to work for the voters of Southern Arizona.
I think this campaign is disproving everything Rod just said. Jesse Kelly has learned a great deal from his 3 years on the campaign trail, and he is evolving. I'm not going to get into this whole my position hasn't changed. We know he has adjusted his positions. But
why do you think it is that he can't actually stand in front of the press and say, my position has changed on this? There's this insistence on the part of the Kelly campaign.
So afraid of flip-flopping or getting called flip-floppers. I think that's where it comes from. And I would just personally call that a tactical mistake. Yeah, the position's changed a little bit, as it should. He's grown. He's learned on the campaign trail. He's listened to voters. He's always said right from day one, we need to protect the promises that have been made to people who are near retirement age. He's adapting his position a little bit to meet the needs of his constituents, which is the right thing for a congressional candidate to do.
And Pete, you're somebody who's been in the lawmaking trenches. You've worked with policy. You've tried to shape policy. Do you get any sense that Jesse Kelly is being very clear about where he is on policy levels on any of this?
Not necessarily. Again, he's all over the place. I don't necessarily agree with Rod on this one in that this kind of presentation by Jesse Kelly doesn't work. It does work, and that's why we see a dysfunctional Congress. That's why we see their approval rating at 9%. That's why the voters are sick and tired of this extremism and people saying one thing and saying another in Congress. And that's why the advantage goes to Ron Barber.
And the extremism line is the line that the Barber campaign is using.
Well, that's clearly what the ad is playing on that House Majority PAC has put up. It's trying to paint Jesse as an extremist when, in fact, we know from polling that his views tend to line up with the majority of the American public, and certainly with the majority in this district, which is a conservative-leaning district. So I think he's right on with his messaging.
I haven't seen a single poll in this district, and I've been looking at polls in this district for 6 years now, that says most people want to eliminate the minimum wage. Most people think rich people are paying too much in taxes. Most people think that a woman shouldn't have a right to choose. I mean, I just don't think it's as conservative a district as Jesse Kelly wants it to be.
And this week we saw a group of seniors come out. We've been talking about the seniors. A group of seniors came out and endorsed Ron Barber from the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. And he had a group come together for him at the Jewish Community Center, and a fellow came out from Washington to actually give him this endorsement. And tell me a little bit about this group and what they're all about, Ron.
The National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare is a grassroots organization with millions of members across the country who believe in preserving Social Security and Medicare. So if that's what this race is about, who do you trust more to preserve Social Security and Medicare? It's clear that this is the group with Ron Barber, that's who they believe in. Now, the group that endorsed Jesse Kelly this week is called the 60 Plus Association. Most of their money comes from the pharmaceutical industry, and they have been in favor of privatizing Social Security for something like 15 years now. Just look up 60 Plus Association privatization, put it in your search engine, and click on that. 60 Plus Association Social Security privatization, and you'll find a press release on their website where they say, we support Social Security privatization. So that's who endorsed Jesse Kelly this week.
And is the whole privatization thing just a really unpopular element, Sam, or is it a thing
I think it's misunderstood. I mean, if you look at if you had invested $1 in the market 20 years ago, you would do better than having that same dollar put into the Social Security Trust over that same period of time, even with the market corrections. Even at the bottom in 2007, that would have been the case. So some form of privatization in a limited fashion may be the answer for Social Security. I think we can look at this right now and say this program is not going to be solvent in 20 years, and something has to be done. I know we're getting away from Jesse Kelly's particular position, but I think, as a conservative, this is something that's very important we take a look at. We do need to preserve our promises that we made, but at the same time, people of my and Rod's generation aren't looking at getting anything out of the money we're putting in right now, and that has to get fixed.
That's a hard argument to make when millions of our people in this country have been harmed seriously by the banking crisis and with their money in the market. It's a very hard argument to make, and our voters won't stand for that.
Had those folks put that same money into a low-risk Wall Street portfolio over their working career, they would still have had more money, even at the bottom of the recession in 2007, would still have had more money in their accounts than they're going to get back from Social Security. So it may be a hard argument to make, but logically it's the right one.
You're asking them to trust the banks.
I'm asking them to trust that history says that an investment in the market does better than an investment in government.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's winners and losers in the market. That's the nature of the dynamic capitalist system we have. There's no losers in Social Security. 75 years, people get their money. My grandparents get their money every month. My dad worked for the phone company.
They get their money because you and I are paying for it right now, but we're not going to be getting anything.
No, we are. You're wrong on the numbers. I'm proud that my parents, who worked their butts off and sent 3 kids to college and didn't take a vacation for 25 years when they raised their kids, I'm proud to have some of my salary go to my parents and my grandparents' Social Security. And I think it's wrong to say that, there's no math model that shows if you and I start to take our money out of Social Security and put it in some retirement account, what happens to our parents? It's malarkey. There's no way to do both. It's a trust between the generations. It's not an IRA.
And, you were saying, Jesse's position is not to privatize anymore. He said that he does not support that. But I want to take a look at what he actually did say on this program, because it's come up a couple of times on this program already.
What about privatization of these two huge entitlement programs?
You must. Bernie Madoff is in prison right now for what the federal government has done with Social Security and Medicare. It's the biggest Ponzi scheme in history. It's not an accident that the government has bankrupted everything they've ever touched, including Social Security and Medicare. They even bankrupted the post office, for goodness sakes. Right now, you have to take steps to reform it, to privatize it, to phase it out. Now, these are not welfare programs. People have paid their entire lives into these programs because the government has stolen their money. So you need to be fulfilling your promises in the near future while phasing out future generations, taking steps to privatize, vouchers, everything. It's not an option of should it be done, it must be done.
Okay, now, Sam, can he credibly move from there to saying he absolutely opposes privatization or phasing out in any way?
Anyone who's currently receiving Social Security or near receiving Social Security is going to hear the first part of the message, which is he's never changed his position on if you've earned those benefits and you're near retirement, you should get them, or if you're retired, you should continue to get them. Obviously, he's changed his position a little bit on what happens to younger workers there. I tend to think a slight partial privatization may be the model for the future. So I actually disagree with Jesse's change on this one personally. But, at the same time, if his positions have grown and adapted and evolved over time, I think that shows that he's a stronger candidate than he was 2 years ago.
And Rod?
I have a few things to respond. First of all, if his positions have evolved and he can explain why, then at least that's honest. But he's just pretending that he never had the position in the first place, which is dishonest. Second of all, I still don't understand how the math works. if guys our age stop paying as much into Social Security as we are now because we're going to put it into a private personal account, then where does the money come from for our parents? No one's been able to explain that to me. I've even asked a couple economists.
It's got to come from the portion that we're still paying in, and we're assuming at this point you and I aren't getting any of that money. So that's,
we're not assuming
that's a donation to the previous generation, and
we're not assuming
and we privatize a portion of it so that you and I have a retirement fund to rely on.
What the trust fund says right now is that if we don't make any changes, and we need to make changes, but if we don't make any, that after 2038 or something like that, we would get 75% of the benefits we should get instead of 100. But we can make those changes in the meantime. I also want to say, I am 40 years old. I remember being a lifeguard in 1986 and getting my first paycheck and seeing the Social Security. I've been paying for 25 years. I want my money when I retire.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to be privatized out of it. I'm not buying.
All right. All three candidates, Jesse Kelly, Ron Barber, and also the Green Party candidate, will be in this studio on Wednesday of next week. And Sam, what do you think Jesse Kelly needs to do in that debate?
I think he needs to make sure that voters understand where he stands on issues, demonstrate the depth and the knowledge that, if you look at our last primary debate down in Green Valley, was very much his strongest performance in the 3 years on the campaign trail. And he really articulated his positions well. And then he needs to create the contrast between himself and Barber, who's embracing all the failed policies of the current administration. So that's the goal for Jesse.
And Rod, what does Ron Barber need to do?
Well, Ron Barber is going to show that he knows this district and cares about this district and is deeply, deeply informed on the struggles that people in Southern Arizona face, whether it comes to the border, whether it comes to protecting Social Security and Medicare, whether it's working with our military installations to keep the local economy strong. Ron Barber is someone who ran a small business, a family business, for 22 years. This is somebody who intimately knows what makes Southern Arizona tick and can be a great voice for Southern Arizona, and I think that's going to come out.
All right. One other footnote to the CD8 race, Sam, Frank Antonori, who ran in the primary, came in third, had been talking about running again in the fall because, of course, we're going to have a regular election cycle. This is a very abbreviated congressional term, is now talking about shifting gears, running for the state legislature.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to go back to the state Senate seat. Obviously, with redistricting, the district he's in, the number changes, but it's basically the same geographic area. He does lose some Republicans there, so it may be a little tougher race than he's had in the past, but no formal announcement, but we've heard multiple sources saying he's confirmed he's going back to the Arizona Senate.
Pete, what do you think about Senator Antonori's chances in a Midtown Tucson district?
I think he's going to have a very difficult time against a very strong candidate, Dave Bradley. Frank Antonori has dissed the city of Tucson repeatedly over the last 4 or 6 years, and it's going to be difficult for him to get them to embrace him.
And Rod?
I mean, I think that for someone like me who is in the political advertising business, I mean, it would be so fun to look at all the crazy, nutty things Frank Antonori has said over the years and just do mail pieces on them, because I just don't think voters in Tucson can possibly support a guy who says that people in Tucson don't pay any taxes and they're all on welfare. And I mean, if you live in Tucson, Frank doesn't think you pay taxes. So that's the guy you want to represent you? I don't think so.
Let's shift over to the U.S. Senate race. Rod, you are working also on Richard Carmona's race. And this week, the campaign sent out a memo outlining the challenges that lie ahead for Jeff Flake.
Well, it's a really interesting poll that came out from, I think it's called Magellan Strategies. They're a Republican-associated polling firm. And in their poll, Rich Carmona, who doesn't have very much name ID outside of Southern Arizona, but right now, he leads Flake with independents by 15 points. According to this Republican poll, leads Flake among moderates by 30 points and only starts with independents with Hispanic voters at 61%. Once you actually tell these voters who Rich Carmona is, what he's all about, who Jeff Flake is, what he's all about, all positive information, no negative information, Carmona takes a lead. I think Flake is in serious trouble. And I think he's going to be pinned down by a well-funded primary campaign by Will Cardin, who's got the support of many of the leading Republican lights in the state, including Russell Pierce and some others. I think you're going to see a real tough Republican primary, and then you're going to see Rich Carmona, who's just an amazing man, who's done a tremendous job for Southern Arizona and for the nation as Surgeon General. he's going to go to the U.S. Senate.
And Sam, how do you see this race shaping up here?
Well, the Carmona campaign made the statement that it's going to be a long, hot summer for Flake. That makes me wonder how much time Richard Carmona has actually spent in Tucson in the summer, because it's pretty much always a long, hot summer here. Jeff Flake, so far, Will Cardin hasn't gained a whole lot of traction despite all his spending. And I think this is just going to strengthen Jeff Flake for the fall elections, especially because he's generating a lot more press in this primary than Richard Carmona is. And again, Carmona is yet another candidate. We have no idea what he actually stands for. He was an independent until a few months ago. Obviously worked for the Bush White House, and actually getting fired from the Bush White House is probably a benefit when you're talking to Republican or Democrat voters at this point. But he's obviously a strong candidate. This is going to be a good race, but I think Flake's going to pull it out.
And Pete, how do you see it shaping up?
I think it'll be very close, and I think they're both very good candidates. I think they'll run a good campaign, and it'll end up being very close.
And Rod, you want to?
Well, I would just say, if you want to know what Rich Carmona stands for or Ron Barber, just go to their website. There's plenty of information. I mean, in the case of Dr. Carmona, here's a guy who's a high school dropout, joined the Army, went to Vietnam, made Special Forces, 2 Bronze Stars, 2 Purple Hearts, put himself through college, became a doctor, started the trauma center here in southern Arizona, 25 years as a deputy sheriff. I mean, this guy has a sterling resume. He has worked his butt off just to help people. That's the kind of man he is. And he's exactly what the Founding Fathers had in mind when they created the Senate. The whole idea of the U.S. Senate was a chamber of notables, not people who'd been career politicians, but people who'd accomplished something in life, and they were going to bring that wisdom and experience to the nation in the Senate. And Rich Carmona is going to do great.
I don't think the Founding Fathers imagined George Washington pulling someone off the street and tabbing them as his chosen successor in a state he doesn't live in. Which is what happened here with Obama pulling Carmona.
Obama doesn't get to vote for Senate in Arizona.
No, absolutely not. He gets to benefit by trying to ride Carmona's coattails.
Well, I want to switch over to the Arizona Legislature. And Pete, as a former lawmaker, they just wrapped up their work last week. What was your takeaway from this session?
It was a pretty extreme session. The Republican majority was a supermajority in both houses, and they took advantage of that. In a sense, the Arizona legislature has become the tip of the spear of extreme policies throughout the country. Whether you're talking about immigration, the war on women, tax cuts at the last minute that don't generate jobs, it was a very frustrating session. And I hope it's behind us for a good many years now.
And this whole war on women question certainly comes up with this bill that Governor Brewer signed last week that says that no federal funding at all can go to Planned Parenthood in this state, even for their programs that help low-income women with mammograms and pap smears and other sorts of sexually transmitted diseases and that sort of thing. And Sam, what did you think of that legislation?
I've said for years that the answer is for Planned Parenthood to divest itself into 2 organizations, one that provides abortion services, one that provides family planning and health care services, because it's obviously a very legitimate concern for a lot of people a moral and religious concern, having their tax dollars used potentially to pay for abortions. They want certainty that that's not going to be the case. Unfortunately, with Planned Parenthood's current setup, you don't have that certainty. And I don't think it's appropriate to ask people who believe deeply in the sanctity of life to help fund abortions. So I think the answer, and I'm surprised fewer people have brought this up, is Planned Parenthood just needs to separate into 2 separate organizations. The abortion clinics can chase private funding. The health services could have a much easier road to get public funding assistance at that point. I think that would be a very good idea.
Rod?
Well, that's an interesting hypothetical case, but in the meantime, 65,000 Arizona women who get health services from Planned Parenthood are out of luck. So that's breast exams, it's free cancer screenings, and we're talking about people in a tough economy who are having a tough time because of the Bush economy hangover we're still dealing with, who are now not going to get their health services. We also have a legislature that still doesn't fund kids care. We're the only state in the union that doesn't fund the state children's health insurance program. We're talking about children and health insurance, and this legislature is socking money away in some rainy day fund. I think when your children don't have health insurance, it's a rainy day.
Pete, Well, you mentioned earlier that the tax cut, the capital gains tax cut that came through as part of the budget plan that's going to cost several $100 million when it's fully fleshed in a couple of years.
On the last day of the session, in committee, 60-page amendments put on a House bill. It was done at the last second. Not even the sponsor could answer the questions about the bill. So I think there are a lot of unanswered questions. Capital gains tax cuts that aren't going to support jobs. These are the same people that are talking jobs, 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 and then they go and give a tax cut that doesn't have a connection to jobs.
Does it create a problem down the road when trying to balance the budget in future years?
Absolutely. When we are not funding kids' care, when we're not funding children's services, when we're not funding education, K-12 and our universities, and then we're giving $100 million tax cuts that don't generate jobs, that doesn't speak well for our future.
Sam, should this go through a more fleshed out process through the legislature?
Well, I always believe in openness, so I would love to see these things come up a little earlier, but I also believe in capital gains tax cuts. I think you can look. Capital gains taxes are the most regressive form of taxes that there is. It's a second, oftentimes a third tax on the same dollar. And it stifles economic growth because the whole point of capital gains, you take your money out of something, you cash out of one business that you've invested in and helped grow. Now you put your money in another business. You can help them grow and create new jobs. That's the way the system is designed to work. When you increase capital gains taxes, you limit that. And, look what happened just today. It was in the paper. Eduardo Saverin, who's the co-founder of Facebook, is taking his money and moving to Singapore. He's just renounced his U.S. citizenship, so we don't get any piece of the $3.4 billion he's about to collect from that. And that's...
You got about 20 seconds left here, Rod. I'm going to give you the last word.
I was just stunned to hear that you're against regressive taxation. So if you're for progressive taxation, I'd like you to join the family. Let's go up to the legislature and talk to these fellas and have a more progressive taxation system, because I think we need it in this country, and it might not help you.
You and I can sit down and figure something out.
We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you guys for being here. That's our show for tonight, but you can keep up with the latest political news by visiting azpm.org/yourvote. And while you're on the website, we'd love to hear your thoughts about tonight's program, so be sure to leave us a comment. And be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Stay tuned next for the News Hour, and then at 8:30, tune into Arizona Week for an in-depth look at the challenges facing the graduating class of 2012. Next Wednesday on Arizona Illustrated, be sure to tune in to the special one-hour debate between the candidates who want to finish Gabby Gifford's congressional term. I'm Jim Ninsel. Thanks for watching, and have a great weekend.